Okay, hello everybody. I think everything's up and running now, and we are streaming live. So thank you very much for joining us for this Virto Commerce hosted webinar. And this is part two in a two-part webinar series all about composable commerce, and what it is, what it isn't, the benefits, the pros, the cons of composable, and also some of the challenges in adopting a composable mindset to your commerce and tech stack within your businesses, specifically inside B2B businesses, manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers, and what that looks like. Part one of the webinar was really about principles. What are the definitions of composable? What does composable actually mean? What do we, when we use the term composable, or when you hear people in the industry using the term composable, what does that mean? And what are some of the principles associated with a composable commerce mindset and related tech stack? Part two, which is this webinar, is all about practice. What does composable mean in practice? How do you adopt it in your business? What are some of the challenges you are likely to encounter? And then we also are going to be talking about what is composable versus decomposable and what that actually means also for your business as you are trying to select the different components that you are building together into one cohesive whole to run your business. My name is Jason Greenwood, and I'm here to be the moderator on the day, and I'm really looking forward to this particular webinar slash panel. Now I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed panelists, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. We are missing one. If you saw the intro slide for the panel and you saw Sasha there, Alexander there, you will see that he is distinctively missing here. Unfortunately, he had to call off sick today, but we do still have an amazing three panelists here to contribute to this panel today. So I'll turn it over to Stefan first. We'll just go clockwise across the screen, or at least how you're all presented on my screen anyway. So we'll start with Stefan, we'll move to Oleg, and we'll finish off with you, Jacobi.
Great. Thank you, Jason, for introducing. For the people who do not know me, I'm Stefan Vissia. I'm product manager at Innovadis, and I'm working on a daily basis on the challenges of getting e-commerce and B2B commerce implemented for our customers.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Oleg?
I'm saying yes, thank you, Jason, and thank you, Stefan. I'm Oleg Zhuk, I'm Virto Commerce CTO, and I have experience of building different kind of B2B, B2C solution with more than 15 years. So that was a small one with 50 products, big one with 40 million products. So then if you have any interesting questions, what happens before and like post storytelling, I think it's we are right person on this call. So you ask questions in the chat, and let me pass word to Jacobi.
Thanks, Oleg. Hi, everyone. Jacobi Zakrzewski. I'm here with Luminos Labs. We are a systems integrator that represents many e-commerce platforms, including a premier partner with Virto Commerce. I've been in IT for the last 15 years, including being an recovering IT executive as well. So happy to be here.
Wow. It's amazing to have such a good breadth of sort of experiences, backgrounds. This is not, for any of us, this is not our first rodeo in helping businesses to define sort of their technical roadmap, helping them deal oftentimes with a lot of tech debt, legacy tech. What does that look like? What do we upgrade first? Do we upgrade the back end first? Do we upgrade the front end first? Do we upgrade the middleware? Do we move from a CSV, mediated middleware system to a full, API-based middleware system? And what happens to the components in our stack that are not API enabled, for example? And now we've got the conversation about AI and agentic commerce, and what does that mean for our businesses, and what are some of the challenges in adopting new technology, either as point solutions or as more holistic multi-business function and multi-business capability solutions. And that's what we're really here to talk about today, the reality of composable. What is truly happening inside B2B companies right now, inside manufacturers and distributors? What are the conversations we're having with some of these manufacturers and distributors? Most manufacturers and distributors, in my experience, and the ones that I talk to, do not ask for composable or headless when I first start talking to them. They oftentimes don't even know what those terms mean. It's not on their radar. They really ultimately just want something that's going to work, is going to work, in a cost-effective manner for their business, is going to be easy for their business users to use. It's going to be easy for their salespeople to leverage instead of having to live inside of an ERP system, for example, to service their customers. And so those are the conversations I'm having mostly today. It's not about, okay, what is the architecture? How does X platform deliver their software to us? Or how is this going to fit into my tech stack? No, they leave that up to experts like us to figure out how to make the tech work for their businesses and how to help them select technology, usually based on the 80-20 rule, right? Which is to say, can this piece of software or can this technology meet roughly 80% of our needs out of the box without massive customization? Because obviously when you launch, the more customizations you launch with, the more technical debt you launch with, the more maintenance is going to be required on those customizations over time. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. And so we're going to start off with our first key topic area, which is what do buyers actually want today versus what do tech teams want, for example? Because oftentimes they're at loggerheads, right? And so oftentimes these businesses, as I said, they don't ask for composability, but what IT usually cares about is decomposability, meaning if I remove one component of this stack or if I remove one feature or function from this piece of software, is it going to cause the entire stack to fall down like a house of cards? So my first question to you guys on the panel here is, when companies approach you, when customers approach, Virto, and they're going through a demo phase or they're going through a discovery phase, or, for Jacobi and Stefan, when customers come to you as solution architects, as SIs who are actually going to be building and maintaining these solutions on their behalf, are they coming to you and saying, hey, I want a composable architecture. Can you help us figure out what components of that architecture we actually need to meet our business needs? Maybe we'll start off with you, Jacobi, and sort of see what type of questions you're getting today from your customers.
Great. Yeah, Jason, no one has ever come to me on the get-go and said, I need a composable architecture and blown up a diagram and say, I want this. No one has ever done that in the last 4 years. Okay. We may get there, but no one starts there. What they do show up with, and I was in the decision-making, position a while back, and there's showing up with a blend of excitement and stress. Okay, first of all, at the same time, that's going on. They're always showing up with something that works for their customers, number one. Solution that works for the customers. Number two, a solution set that works for their internal teams that they can manage themselves while having some semblance of autonomy versus the technology managing them. All right. They certainly want something that lands on time and on budget. And I know that sounds like table stakes, but it's actually much harder, as many of us have experienced than reality shows. And above all, last but not least, they want to avoid regret on these decisions. And again, that sounds easy, but my gosh, buyer's remorse is a big thing in this world. So composables has never been the tip of the spear in the conversation. You may end up there, but really what they're asking for is stability and then flexibility later on. Composable can happen to be a way to get there responsibly, but you're generally not starting there. That's how people are showing up to our doorstep. And the last thing I'll mention is that some organizations are showing up with the what and the why very well defined. Very well defined. I'm talking hundreds of pages of specifications, the designs, and they just need someone to execute. Other times they're showing up with basically one requirement that says, I need a new website, and then everywhere in between. But those first things I mentioned are always constants. The excitement, the stress, on time, on budget, solutions that work. Those are constants.
Love that. Stefan, over to you to sort of give us your take and maybe some stories about what type of questions, I'm guessing that similar to Jacobi, your customers aren't necessarily coming to you with that terminology. Oh, we want headless or we want composable in our stack. That's that, at least for me, just like Jacobi, I'm never getting that. Like that's never the opening gambit when a customer comes to me. And how about you?
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I never had a meeting where somebody came at the table and said, okay, let's build a composable architecture and let it go. Now, most of the times they're coming with us with a certain area where they're experiencing pain. For example, they want to improve something like their product data, or they want to have more control about their integrations, about their pricing and their contract. And basically what we're doing is we're helping them from becoming digital aware to becoming a digital leader. So we're going to make a roadmap with them to see which kinds of pains they're on the way, which kinds of data or resources or boundaries are not clarified and not clear. And then we're getting into a kind of discovery. Where can we get real benefit? And like you said in the introduction, sometimes the real benefits can come from internal sales, because internal sales needs more information, more interaction, more insights in what's happening. On the other end, some customers really want to have their customers have more data, dealer ownership. Dealers can see what kind of products are being sold. Vendors want to see how their products evolve. So mainly what we're seeing is that a lot of companies, especially within Europe, are digital aware. Also in Europe, maybe you're familiar with it, we have a lot of regulations and compliance to work by. So digital awareness is there, but then coming from digital awareness to a digital leader, you can be a leader today in the traditional way, but becoming a digital leader is completely different journey in that. That's something that we're trying to help them and discover with them which steps we should take. And it could start at product data. It could start at pricing and contract management. It could start in orchestrating the commerce components a little bit better. Sometimes it means going composable. Sometimes it means just adopting at something they already have to get the first pains out of the way and then see where we can go with them in the future. But asking about composability at the first meeting, no, that does not happen. We have to help them and then see if it fits their needs.
Yeah, Oleg, obviously you're the tip of the spear from a technical perspective over at Virto, and you know what I like to think about platforms like Virto is kind of a modular monolith, right, or a suite-based platform, meaning that there are components that are default out of the box. They're pre-integrated, but you know, if I decide, for example, with Virto, if I decide not to use the enterprise search function that's in the platform, and I choose to use, I don't know, let's say I choose an Algolia or some third-party enterprise search platform, and I disable search within Virto, that doesn't break the entire stack, right? Meaning it doesn't cause the whole house of cards to fall apart of the rest of the platform. And so I think, you know, we're going to talk a little bit more about decomposable later on. But you know, when I think of modular monoliths or suite-based platforms like Virto Commerce, I think customers may not necessarily realize this, but by definition, they are getting a composable commerce stack that comes along for the ride, whether they realize it or not. But I'm guessing when customers come to you for that first demo or whatever it is, or maybe come via an SI partner like these guys, you know, bring to the table, the last thing that they probably say is, show us how composable you are, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So nobody asked about composability, but at some times on the first demo, so it's when we provided some generic functionality, customer can start, or potential customer can start the discussion is like, okay, we need, we have some pain points like 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we have a business, we need to achieve business challenges like grow business in 2, 3 times in next 2, 3 years. So we understand it. At some times, we receive from our technical team and from our IT guys that our solution is legacy, right, as usual. So it's not possible to achieve this business goals to the system because nobody understands how it works. We can support and maintain, but change, grow, this current solution should be destroyed. It's the current situation, right? And create it from scratch. Second approach, we need when we ask what you need, as I said, we need standard e-commerce, we need website, it's generic, but then when we are demonstrating and provide what kind of capabilities and features we have, you can see that okay, so it's good, but then here we need to add additional buttons. Maybe this step in the checkout should be extended with new options where we are allowed to upload some contract documents or some PDF or legal task documents right to it. Or maybe we need to extend additional additional step verifications or approval process on registration flow. My favorite scenarios and various story about it is, so usually we demonstrate like list a sale price, but then one of our customers said, so is it possible to add here recommended price, right? So it's just small button where we will demonstrate the information from another side. So, and on the initial demo, we start to collect it, and I expect Stefan and Jacobi start to collect it. It looks initial expectation. We have it we'll have like common e-commerce business, right? So we need to create a, like Jacobi said, website, but at the same time, every business and B2B, primary, and B2C has own unique features, requests, and functionalities that it's like they use it for brings it some benefits, right, of the business. It's own interesting functionality and features they are using for current solution, and they prefer to keep it because it's uniqueness versus another businesses. They want to keep it, reuse it, and bring this uniqueness from existing legacy solutions. They want to eliminate it to new one, but at the same time, it's generic. And here, what I see, it's everybody is trying to look on looking for generic solution, but sometimes it contains a lot of nuances, a lot of adjustments that we need to implement it and provide. And composability, if you start to talk about it, it's about this kind of conditions. So solution is working, but what is the effort is required to fit your requirements, to migrate your business requirements and what you achieved for last 20, 30 years. So you keep properties, your business model, and everything what you have it into this e-commerce. Of course, if you want to keep it. If you not, so it's more easy, but it's usually they prefer to do it. So that's how I see it, right? So etc. So it's the first initial session for the with customer, and how I understood that generic one, it's what we presented in the previous one, making in more complicated and more interesting. And you, like solution architect, need to plan it. So it's and present, okay, we need to deliver it. We need to support your feature request functionality. At the same time, it should not increase the scope of the project to going to MVP, to going to the live, right? Because if a solution will be grow and implementation scope of the work will be increasing, it means delaying of the implementation and will take more effort and increase the cost. And it's also revert back to the client side about the cost of the project, right? And capability also about it. How many effort implementation team should implement to adjust the current solutions, it's like a box, right? A black box, e-commerce solution to feed this client's needs. It's how I see it, and how it can be relevant, not composability, but the same requirements to make solution adjustable to fit business requirement. And as I usually talking about in Virto Commerce, it's my main idea that technical team with modern cloud technologies and dev team should always have possibility to implement any business requirement. So if your business ask something to implement it, you should be able to implement it, and you should not say, no, it's not possible. So it's, yes, we can do it today. Technology supported, cloud technology, AI technology can do it. So it's, and composability about this one. So it's just one word, but it contains a lot of insight. It contains a lot of nuance. And honestly, I'm thinking that customer should not honestly know about this word. He should bring, here's the current situation, what we are, and here where we planning to be in like after 1, 2, 3 months in 1 year, and we just need to decide that how we can transform what we have, like platform or another solution, to achieve this goal. That's all.
Yeah, and I think you make a very good point, which is that, you know, MVP, minimum viable product or minimum viable solution, is different for everybody. And like, for example, if a manufacturer distributor comes to me and they're doing e-commerce for the very first time, their expectations out of a digital solution are by definition going to be lower, right? Whereas if this is their third replatform project, they've been transacting digitally for many years, maybe in some cases 10, 15, 20 years, they've been transacting digitally. They're not going to want to start from a place that's lower or less than what they have today. So when we think of MVP for B2Bs, it really does depend. You have to kind of meet them where they are, right? If they've never had a digital solution in their business before, if they've never had an e-commerce solution in their business before, then just implementing something relatively basic that, you know, at least can meet their requirements for a restricted catalog, can at least meet their requirements for custom price lists, that can at least meet their requirements for managing quote requests. If we can tick some very basic boxes in the first instance, then that's usually going to get it done for somebody that's never done digital before. And there's still 40 to 60% the data shows 40 to 60% of manufacturers and distributors in the US today still do not offer e-commerce. Now that's very vertical dependent. It's very, what's the age of the business, all that sort of stuff. But we still have a lot of greenfields opportunities in the B2B world, which means that when they come to us and ask us the question, the decision isn't really, it feels like anyway, reading between the lines here, the decision isn't really whether to be composable or not. It's how can they avoid being locked into a system that they can't escape from later? And they don't want lock-in to a platform. They don't want lock-in even to a component of a platform. They don't want lock-in to a single SI. They want to be able to change SIs if needed. And oftentimes, obviously, if we're building everything custom, then that locks them into their SI partner who has built that for them. And so I think what Composable does is it removes and it lowers the level of lock-in, or it can, if done right, it can lower the level of lock-in and increase the level of flexibility. Now, just moving on to topic 2 here, key topic 2, composable versus decomposable. So let's go a little bit deeper into that, what that actually means in practice. What's the difference between composable, decomposable? Why does decomposability matter so much, especially in the B2B world? And, based on my experience, some platforms that claim to be modular, if you remove one component of that platform, search, merch, personalization, whatever it might be, the whole platform collapses. It's interdependent, meaning that, like, for example, if you use the search engine within the platform that is facing the customer, if that's deeply tied into admin functionality as well, you can't disable that component because it causes everything to break inside the platform, right? So maybe talk us through what your concept, when you think of decomposability, why does that matter? And why should it matter to your clients? And again, we'll start with you, Stefan, this time around.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to address, Jason. And like you said before, is that when you're starting with the customer, they have all kinds of different systems, or maybe a monolith of whatever's there. And we want to replace that. And that's not something that's going into one night, of course. What we're first doing, and I'm glad you told it previously, is that we're looking very good to the minimal viable product, depending on where the customer is in their digital awareness, of course. But as a customer, as a green field, they have some Excels laying around and they have a sales department doing a lot of emails. Very familiar, I see in your face. Most of the times we're starting with what we're calling our foundation in B2B. And our foundation, most of the time, over delivers what the customer expects. What we did from Innovadis start point of view, we productized the Virto stack, what we're calling our own B2B stack. We're making use of the most in-house modules and available functionality. So if you talk about, we have an in-house catalog, and if the customer does not have a PIM system there yet, we're using the catalog as a PIM. And in a later point, they can attach a PIM to it. They can also decouple it again and attach another PIM to it. The same for things like pricing engines. Pricing from the minimal viable product, including contract management, is completely delivered by Virto. But if you want to make the next step, you're going to connect to the price engine of Microsoft F&O, for example, or to the inventory services of Microsoft F&O. All those components are in place when we're talking about the standard and the foundation. And one of the traits that we like to do is, when a customer comes greenfield, we want to have them up and running in 2 to 4 weeks with a minimal viable product, with a basic theme around it, also with a customer portal where they can see their invoices, where they can see all the information. That's all be done in Virto. And then we're going to connect the touch points. And in some situations, we can connect them because we have built modules on Virto to interact with them. We're building a lot of modules on Virto because their agnostic approach is amazing. For example, if you look to payment method, they have a number of out-of-payment methods out of the box, and we integrated with the European payment system that will also be changed from the 1st of January. For us, it's very easy to use those switches and turning things on and off. Same with PIM systems. If there is no PIM catalog is used, else we're connecting a PIM. For us, it's very important to put that minimal viable product in place. Let the customer experience what it is, and then see where it can align with the different systems they already have within their application landscape. And Virto itself, it's for the people who are not really technical into it, it's open source, very modular and extensive. So the flexibility is great. And for example, the search provider was a very good example that you gave. But most of the customers were connecting to Azure Search, Elasticsearch, Angolia, but we're also having some specialized search implementations that are connected with third parties that provide, for example, personalized search results by combining Google Analytics, traffic, and user information together to see what's the most profitable or the best products that can be provided to that specific customer on the website. And that can also be implemented by agnostic. So now that provider we have enabled for certain customers of us. But if they want to switch to Azure Search back or to a future search provider, it's just configuration by putting on a switch, enabling a module, no implementation in that. If you look to custom implementations, that's the last part I want to add to this. Of course, like Oleg said, customers always want something that's maybe not standard, not in the MVP. Our approach in that is most of the times we're going to see, do we see it more in the market? What's being asked? Is it a general thing that's being asked by the customer? If it's not, most of the times I will contact Oleg. Did you hear it? Do you have an idea how that could be implemented or resolved in a module? If both is not the case, you have to have a good discussion with the customer why they really want it. And then we isolate it in a custom implementation. And hopefully in a future release of Virto, it will be standardized and we can move out the custom implementation. But there's a kind of thinking process in that to minimize your custom implementations and flow the ride of the standard, like I'm calling it. So that's my final note. Back to you, Jason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, I think it's interesting, and instead of just leaving all these questions till the end that are coming through from the attendees, one of the questions here, and it's really contextual to this concept of decomposability. Talking of decomposability, can you give a real world example of a decomposable component? What does it look like in practice? I'll throw this over to you, Jacobi, in a second, but there's three primary things that I see that oftentimes will be disabled, whether it be at the start of the project or at some future state where they're going to replace a component of a commerce platform with a best-of-breed third-party component. There are three primary components I see in the B2B world that are oftentimes replaced by a standalone third-party component. That is PIM, that is enterprise search, and that is CPQ. So oftentimes, at the start of a project, the e-commerce platform is expected to provide search, merchant personalization. It's expected to provide at least light PIM, product information management capabilities with all the attributes and the workflows around enrichment, etc. It's also expected to provide at least basic quote handling, quote management, quote approval workflows, escalation workflows out of the box. But then 1, 2, 3 years post live, especially once they get comfortable with the platform and they say, well, look, we can either customize the platform to do all these custom nuanced things, or we can adopt a third-party tool that already does those custom nuanced things out of the box. Those are three key areas, especially in B2B, that I see components withdrawn from the platform or at least enhanced by third-party solutions. Over to you, Jacobi, for your take on that.
Samantha, great question. First of all, Jason, you mentioned a key word that is really important, which is comfort. Okay, so when you are putting in, most of our clients that we work with are non-digitally born manufacturers and distributors, meaning they've been around for 100 years, okay? Sub 10% online revenue kinds of things going on, right? Barely maybe can even spell e-commerce. Like that's the way it is. So generally speaking, what happens is what I like to call accidental composability. So you start out implementing a solution like Virto where it has quote unquote all-in-one types of things. Your CMS, your search, your PIM, all that stuff is built within one system. Then over the course of time, as things mature in your organization, you go, the marketing team really needs to be able to, do a lot more with CMS and content, things like that. We're very comfortable with what Virto can provide, but we're reaching a ceiling on that. Is there something else out there that we can supplement? And then you find your Contentful, your Builder.io, your Optimizely, whatever. And then the marketing team brings in the CMS platform conjoined with Virto, for example, that does the commerce operations. And then, maybe a year or two passes along and this stuff does not happen overnight. Jason, as you alluded to, this is a marathon, okay? And then the team goes, nobody we can't seem to manage our product data very well with these 500,000 products. Right. It's hard to manage that stuff in mass, even if the suppliers provide you that data that's standardized but not normalized. Okay. So then you say, we're growing outside of the catalog manager inside Virto. Maybe we should have a PIM. You go and look at PIMs. And again, the PIM by itself doesn't solve everything. You still need the people behind it. That's a major piece of this. And then eventually you find yourself going, well, nobody can find our products. We got good product data, nobody can find them. Maybe we should implement a third-party search or supplemental search platform. So over the course of time, you've unlocked these like operational milestones, these stretch goals, right? I think too many times organizations, non-digitally born companies, sometimes try to buy this whole e-commerce thing with a set of solutions right out of the gate. And then you just fumble over yourself. And then that's kind of just a way to burn money at the end of the day with a multi-year agreement. But if you slowly unlock these capabilities from number one, a technical standpoint, but number two, internal expertise standpoints, because your team gets comfortable using these platforms and they reach a ceiling. The point is, you don't want to start out with a skyscraper of a ceiling out of the gate. Like you should grow into that over the course of time. And so, Samantha, to your question, as Jason alluded to, there's the core e-commerce thing, and then there's content, and then there's product data, and then there's search. 5 years later, you suddenly have this architecture that is composable, but you grew comfortable with it over the course of time. You didn't get there from a Monday to a Tuesday. You got there over years of time. And hopefully over the course of that time, your business was going well, and you've changed maybe from offline orders to online orders, that kind of thing, and you've grown digital adoption, which is, as we all know, one of the biggest challenges in this space. So that's just a good example, and almost all of our clients reach that through a multi-year process, intentionally, not by accident.
Yeah, and Oleg, I'd like to throw
Yeah.
this over the fence to you because decomposability sounds great in theory, but from an actual architectural perspective, building a platform that is natively pre-integrated, is modular, is reasonably feature-rich and complete out of the box without having to build a whole bunch of custom stuff just to get up and running with a basic working e-commerce solution for B2Bs. That sounds like, when you say it 3 times fast, it sounds super easy. But when you're trying to actually build this thing behind the scenes to be decomposable with some designed-in interdependencies, but not codependencies, because codependency, as we know from the real world, is a bad thing. Interdependency is a good thing. This is easier said than done, right? So what are some of the things you think about architecturally as you build out the roadmap for Virto to retain its composability, but also its decomposability, whilst also thinking through the lens of how can we include as many features as reasonably could be expected from a commerce platform out of the box? It feels like there's some natural tension there that you have to bridge those, in sometimes competing ideals within the same platform. So is this a challenge for you as you roadmap out the platform over the next 1, 2, 3 years, especially with the coming of agentic commerce, agentic AI, et cetera? Now, all of a sudden, we have to not just think about all the functionality that maybe could have been expected over the last decade, but we have to try to make sure that it's flexible enough for the next coming decade as well.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, so it's related to decomposability. So let me say, from the platform point of view, you like implementation partner, you should not think about it. So the platform should care about it. So control, you create some boundaries and drive you. So you should focus on implementation only business requirements and don't think about how to scale, how to maintain, how to do the right modularity. And I'm always talking to business. If one day somebody from technical team say, is it kind of architecture decision need to discuss and implement it part of the project, so it's a good time to reach me and say, hey guys, something wrong. So it's not our decision, it should be covered by the platform. Please provide guideline how to implement it properly. It's just first point. So how we are thinking and how we are building the platform, that your focus on implementation business requirements. If you have requirements, you can decide how to implement it, and a platform creates specific boundaries that you could not. Of course, you can, but it's too heavy for you to create it. It's too many dependencies, too many restrictions by the code, right? And create a poor architecture and create like point-to-point connections or wrongly, because it takes more effort than implement it properly. The second approach, of course, when we start to implement the Virto Commerce, we understand. So we start with 1, 2, 3 features, and then count of the modules is growing every year. And if without the composability, without possibility to choose, because every feature is needed at the right time. So if you start from nothing, from greenfield, so you need only generic modules like catalog, shopping cart, order module, and that also provide ability for the customer to find the product, add to the shopping cart, place the order, capture, create transaction, or process CPQ, as you mentioned for B2B, that also. Then your team and level of maturity of customers, employees, and Jason, I like this approach, so also mentioned about it, so it always take times and always about expertise. So it's not, you can deploy and present for the customers, for your employees and for distributors and vendors what you're working for now, all functionality what you have, but it's not possible to enable it and enable it for business process integrated that it will be useful for everybody. So you need the right feature in right time, and also provides understanding that it brings value for your business. It means in Virto Commerce and another good solutions that fit to Composable, you have flexibility to choose. It's you decided what you needed for your time for this one, start with this one, and you have two options how you can scale your business. You can add additional feature request. You can review what we have and integrate it into your solution, into your product, right? Enabling like from Lego blocks and created more and more mature systems. So tested, verified. And also I have a very interesting story about, it can be a good example of composability. When it was one of our client project, when I play solution architect role, so it was mid of the summer, so it's low season for the business. So it's zero or around zero orders. And the marketing team decided, okay, we need to implement this functionality. Okay, maybe some marketing promotions. The platform itself at this moment, the product doesn't support these capabilities. We have two options. We can say, no, it's not possible, takes 1 to 3 weeks for implementations or etc. And they will start to calculate the budget. It will be very huge, and they prefer to implement it at all. We said, okay, we will implement it and delivery, adjust the functionality like A/B testing in a few days. So it's from initial idea to implementation and test it, adjust to customize it, put into the product. So it's remove previous one and then start a new one. So provide opportunity, unless a mistake, and it was related, provide some marketing promotion on top of the products that are in the warehouses and now. So it's like 1-day delivery or maybe 2-day delivery and may provide some % discount. So this kind of automation. And we deployed, it was surprise for everybody, for business person as well, so that this small adjustment and cheap implementations, first of all, we will implement it. It was not possible with another platform. And second one, it increased the count of the orders in 10 times. I know what changed it, maybe just a right feature in time, but for me, I was so proud that I saw that I can allow to business and primary marketing team to decide, okay, I want to test it. I want to verify it. We, as a technical team, as implementation, we can deliver it very fast. And if it works, we can allow to them to provide the adjustment, verify it, and test it. And it's very important for me, this first of all, composability. It's not necessary to, if you're talking about this one, not necessary to think about whole process, whole features in one time, to deploy it and use it. Because every feature is, for every feature, we need resources, right? So if you install more, we need to have more resources, more attentions on technical level, on customer level, on employee level. Next one is another one, so we can grow and solution can grow the same speed as you want as a business. And third one, I think is point, don't block creative marketing business ideas and allow to them to test it and verify it. Because it's not possible in modern world to just get, okay, we can install it, it works properly. Of course, some generic core functionality like cross-sells or marketing promotions, it works, right? It should be. But then it's depend on the customer persons, on your business modules, your way of the decisions, how you see your business. And I see it's very important for the business to understand that we can change business ideas. At the same time, any platform can bring and support it. And final one, just from my words, it's Today, it's not possible, and unless I'm mistaken, Stefan already said it's not possible to implement and have one e-commerce solution. It's always ecosystem. So we have a lot of service around, and you start and glue in your business more and more and more services. And if you build the architecture principle, you use correct platform that's built on correct architecture principles and integrated properly, so you will have opportunity to change it, modify it as easily as you do it 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And you can do this transformation. And finally, what I understood, it's for business very important to understand, to trust, right? Because it's a small point. I remember when I copied one slide from Salesforce Solution Architect blog where he demonstrated why developers don't touch and don't modify the code inside of the kind of solution sort, right? It was a mesh of the point-to-point integrations. It's not possible to change something without affect another system. So if a developer or IT person will solve it, he prefer don't touch it. It's so too risky, right, to modify it because you can crash the business at all.
Oleg, sorry to interrupt. It's
No.
my job, unfortunately, to sort of keep us on time and to make sure we can get through all the points. So I appreciate everything you've just said. I think if I was to boil this down, and if I was to this key topic, this idea of decomposability versus composability, and if I was to boil this down into its component parts, through my lens, decomposability is a risk conversation, right? If the platform is not decomposable, meaning you cannot remove a component without breaking the stack, then that's a major risk issue, right? Composability itself is the future optionality conversation. So it is the flexibility conversation. And so that's the lens that I look at this through. Decomposability equals managing risk. Composability equals managing future opportunity, optionality, and flexibility. So I think that's both sides of that coin, super important to businesses. The next major topic we want to get through today is build versus buy versus partner. Now, this is just as true when we start considering this. This is just as true when we're thinking about platform technology. Do we want to build something from scratch? Do we want to buy something? Do we want to buy something that is a toolkit that we can then customize? But also, do we want to build an internal development team? Do we want to build an internal maintenance team? Do we want to have an internal IT team? Or do we want to buy in that resource via an SI partner, obviously like Stefan and Jacobi's businesses, right? So this build versus buy question is something that I get asked an absolute ton by my clients. They're going, how much of this capability should we have in-house? How much should we bring in from other third parties? How much knowledge transfer should realistically be happening from those third parties to us so that we're not dependent on them for absolutely everything? How much should we expect to own over time as we learn the platform, as we onboard the platform into the business? But then also, should we be building really a custom solution? Because oftentimes, B2Bs think they're a precious snowflake, in my experience. They all think that they are totally unique, that there's no other business on the planet that operates like them, that their sales process is totally unique, that their catalog is totally unique, that their pricing is totally unique. And they think they're so precious and they think they're so unique that they think there is not one single out-of-the-box platform that could ever meet their requirements. And oftentimes I get the pleasure of popping that little bubble and saying, actually, once we get through discovery, if there are areas where you need customization, I'll be very honest and transparent with you about that. But, today, 5 years ago, this probably wasn't the case. Today, there are multiple great platforms out there that are designed either solely for B2B or very B2B heavy platforms that now can meet easily, in all cases, at least 80% of my client requirements out of the box. And so I think I'll throw it over to the fence to you first, Jacobi, and then maybe we'll go to you, Stefan, second. This build versus buy conversation is so common in my daily work, it must be for you too.
Yeah, I find it interesting that we treat it as an analog statement, as if it's true or false, or like if they're versus each other, when most times it's an and statement. Almost all times it's an and statement, like let's build and buy and partner. Some spectrum of that's happening no matter what. And so one of the things that I like doing, and my old man used to tell me, Jacobi, you're unique just like everyone else. Okay. I always remember that because day to day I speak with B2B companies that say the same thing. And, we're unique because we have the best customer service. Listen, everyone says that. Okay. Um, that kind of thing. But what I find interesting is that there's so many packaged business capabilities or commodities at this point. I run across a lot of manufacturers that believe they need to build their own punch out capability. Well, as a manufacturer, is that your special sauce? Is punch out really? It's not building those lasers. Yeah, it's building lasers is a unique function, is the unique thing you do as a company. How about we buy the punch out platform and then have that be just a thing that customers expect of you? And then focus your engineering time on the lasers versus the punch out capabilities. Okay. So I run across that a lot. And I think that's a good barometer statement of what is your company doing that's so unique that provides your moat? And if it's a general commodity thing, most times just buy it. Don't build it. Okay. But if it's a very unique thing that establishes your moat as a company, maybe we should consider building it because it's intellectual property. Most times that is not the case, though. It has to be something very special for that to happen. So that's generally where I see the build versus buy. Now, on the partner side, I had the pleasure or displeasure of being, an internal IT leader. And it seems like a lot of times in the IT space, business folks treat IT like doctors. I don't want a foot doctor doing surgery on my brain. Same thing in the IT space, actually. Okay, so digital IT is very different than traditional IT. They are not the same thing. And so I generally prefer B2B organizations who have not built that digital IT muscle to partner with someone to build that. And even then, I question keeping it internal. I always believe that internal teams should have some semblance of accountability internally inside their company, no matter what. That's just good risk mitigation, no matter what. Being totally reliant on a third party is very dangerous. So you should have some semblance of accountability inside your organization. But Jason, as you alluded to, it is very hard to retain experts, developers, engineers, designers, things like that. Folks like that want to be constantly challenged. And if your business can't constantly challenge them, their mind will go elsewhere. That will happen. And so retaining that expertise is very difficult to do. And if you treat your digital side of things like a one-time project, those experienced people, they're going to find other problems to solve in other organizations. That's just the reality of it. And so I find partnering a lot just for retention and expertise purposes only is a very good thing to do. It's not even a cost effectiveness conversation. It's just retention conversation. So I find that a lot. But if you intend on having this digital thing be kind of a program of yours long term, you should have some internal kind of accountability versus being reliant on someone. Because every larger organizations do go through third party risk when it comes to vendors. And so I think just having some semblance of self efficiency is very important no matter what. But last point I'll make is it is always an and statement. I think it's always build and buy and partner. It's just a matter of making those decisions versus having it be a true or false question, though.
Yeah,
I'll leave it at that.
I agree. It's not a binary for any of the businesses that I deal with. It's never a binary question. It's never a yes or no answer. It's usually a combination of all of the above, and at least from a governance perspective, at least from a system integration perspective, at least from a long-term maintenance perspective, at least from a security and DevSecOps perspective, that's where the internal IT team, even if they don't have chops around digital, they can ask those key questions of vendors, of partners, etc. They can hold those partners accountable in a way that a standard business user inside the business just cannot. And so I think having some level of digital accountability to some form of an IT lead, some form of a digital lead inside the business, absolutely mission critical. So if you think you're going to get away with 100% outsourced capabilities, that's going to really leave you pretty vulnerable long term. I think that's a real challenge. Stefan, your take on this when your customers come to you.
Yeah, I totally agree with Jacobi and with you, Jason. When you're looking at build versus buy versus partner, it's always going together in this. First of all, I agree. Building lasers is keep your focus on building lasers. That's the discussion we're having a lot. When we're talking to customers, primarily we're not talking with development departments. We're talking with decision makers who wants to bring their digital awareness to the next level. Sometimes they have the illusion to also becoming developers, but then of course, if you look to the investments and the skills and the people, you have to build a dev team and everything. That's not going to be future-proof for an organization like that. So most of the times they're coming to us. What we do see at customers themselves is that they have to have control about the processes that we're going to digitize. They have to take ownership over those things. So sales should have ownership about contracts, pricing, and how they occur with customers. Product managers need to have focus on product management itself. So we're not understanding their organization, how they're building the lasers and how the lasers itself are being built. That's the knowledge we need to get from them, and that's knowledge they can bring into PIM systems, into components that we're going to add to their complete application landscape or solution that they want. When it comes to build, we're trying to keep building minimum. Trying to always see if there is a partner that we can connect to, which is specialized in that area. But we have consultants that can help the customer get everything into place, getting the initial implementation of their PIM system, getting the first configuration, best of practices when it comes to commerce. And then we're having partners that we're integrating and trying to get on markets with. We have multiple PIM partners because we don't build PIMs. We have partners who are really specialized in PIMs. The same for dump systems, the same for search experience, ERP systems. That's not something that's our core business. Our core business is to be the glue into the application landscape. Let systems work together, bring experience on board. A good example to see when you're talking about a PIM system, the main focus is you're not making your ERP the primary source for product information anymore. When going to a PIM system, product data will move to the PIM implementation. Pricing, logistics will stay in the ERP system. There will be a commerce platform or what kind of platform to expose that information to different touch points, of course. But it also means that the company has to think about, okay, what are the business rules between the PIM and the ERP? Because here we're talking about commerce and everything, but there are more lines in an application landscape you need to think about when you're decomposing things and putting them in their specialized environment. So also integrations between a PIM and an ERP. Where is master product creation starts? Does it start in the PIM? Does it start in the ERP? What if a product gets disabled in the ERP that it cannot be ordered anymore? What does that do to the PIM? What does that do to the commerce system? So that glue, those business rules, those engagements, that's something that we try to get in line with partner systems. Sometimes we build it ourselves, but most of the times the end customer will get training from us, getting into the portal, can work with Virto, can work with their PIM systems, can work with the configuration of their additional components. But mostly it's an orchestration of different specialized environments.
Yeah, totally understand. I mean, I think if we were to wrap kind of this topic up in a nice big red bow, I think it's very, very clear that people, processes, and data come long before technology discussions and decisions, right? So the reality is, what are the needs? What are not only your internal business needs, but what are your customers' needs and wants and desires? How can we help make their life better, faster, and easier, especially in the B2B world, because they have a job to be done on their side. So we're trying to help them do their job better, faster, easier, more efficiently. And the tech is kind of the last piece of the puzzle, right? We don't start with tech. At least I don't, and I know you guys don't. The tech is not the first piece of the conversation. It's everything else, and then the tech backs into that and meets those requirements where they are. Now, if we're to look a little bit further, there's quite a build versus buy versus partner. I think this also is impacted a lot by our next key point, which is Europe versus US. There are some very, very clear differences, and I've got clients in Europe and I've got some clients in the US. And so what oftentimes my European clients come to me with first is compliance, right? That's like the first, most overarching, biggest, hairiest, scariest requirement that they have. It's not, okay, here's our unique sales process. Oh, we're a unique snowflake because we sell these unique products, or we curate this unique catalog. It's, hey, Our first and last thought when we come into these major, projects is how can we be compliant with GDPR and all sorts of other regulations? Sometimes we have vertical specific regulations. Sometimes we have country specific regulations. Sometimes, we have EU specific regulations or UK specific regulations. So we have a regulatory landscape in Europe. Frankly, as an American who lived in New Zealand for almost 30 years and who now lives in Mexico, European regulation terrifies me. And it is one of those things that gets so much airtime in my conversations with them versus the US, where regulation, compliance, and everything else hardly ever comes up in the discussion unless they work in a regulated industry like, cannabis, for example, or something like that, or firearms or something like that, where they work in a very heavily, or fintech or something like that. If they work in a very heavily regulated industry, then that will come into the conversation, but it is never the first point of conversation. And so as a result of that, the SaaS, pure multi-tenant SaaS platforms, oftentimes they won't work for my European clients because they have to have data privacy and integrity and self-hosting and all sorts of other things. So when we compare the American market versus the European market, oftentimes Americans come to me first. What's our biggest opportunity here, and how can we execute on it? Oh, cool! I've got this project I'm going to tender for, this opportunity I'm going to tender for, but they're telling me I have to be able to service them digitally. Otherwise, I can't even tender for that sales opportunity. So oftentimes Americans come through the lens of biggest opportunity and how can we execute on that quickly and efficiently versus Europeans, how can we protect ourselves from downside risk? That's their number one priority first. Then the opportunity is the second conversation. So let's maybe compare and contrast a little bit some of the discussions that we're all having with our American clients versus our US clients and how that impacts not only technology decisions, but also people and process decisions internally as well. So we'll start off with you, Stefan, perhaps.
Yeah. It's spot on what you're saying about the compliance, etc. In the last years, you saw the discussion on that part completely change. Of course, I believe around 8 years ago, GDPR was introduced within Europe, saying a lot about how we should treat data from customers, personalized information, etc. The primary question from that point is, where is my data hosted? And of course, when talking about composable or decomposable again, we're talking a lot about software, but it also applies to things like hosting, data storage, where are my files and where is my data? So being agnostic on that end, being agnostic to go to different cloud platforms, running things on your local machine, having your backups within Europe, those are discussions and anchor points we hear constantly. And of course, everybody should understand that Europe is not one country. We try to be one country, but of course we're not, like you said. Every country has their own regulations, their own payment systems, their own way of implementing certain GDPR or even supplier awareness regulations that we have currently, and where are products produced. The passporting, product passporting, they're all high on the agenda when it comes to compliance, but also sustainability, which is the other big item that we hear a lot. How sustainable are the processes we do? Is there a possibility to return items? How do we look at spare part management? Can we do things like rental services? So the whole sustainability in combination with compliance is the big topic that we're currently having. Good thing for us is that the platforms, of course, that we're working with are possible to host in multiple regions, multiple areas, so we could get the data to Europe. Some customers want to have it locally stored, of course, but also when looking to suppliers. There are a lot of different suppliers of third-party solutions within the B2B landscape. And what GDPR did for us and compliance did is that we have to audit them. We have to see, okay, if we're going to use a supplier, where is their data stored? How are they treating the GDPR guidelines? So it's not only a question of what we're doing with the data, but also when we're sending data, what kind of data are we sending? Where are we sending it to? Is it not backed from an SLA somewhere in the US, but it needs to be in Europe? So the whole compliance area got the overhand, let's put it that way. that also makes things a lot more composable within Europe, because we have different companies of different countries. I mean, we have different suppliers that act differently within those countries. Some do not have regulations in certain companies, so you have to find an alternative for it. So compliance is a good thing, not necessarily making our work easier in this to make a kind of sum up. But it are good discussions, because it forces us to think in a composable and decomposable way, if we want to put it back on the theme of this panel, of course, because the systems that you choose, the platforms that you choose, and the suppliers that you choose should fit in those criteria that are currently very promising and very active in Europe, and with customers that we're talking to.
Yeah, I think key point here is platform selection criteria oftentimes is very different, America versus Europe, or at least there's maybe some enhanced selection criteria in Europe because of that, compliance factor. Jacobi, your take, I know you guys have some clients in Europe, you have some compliance in the US, but, are you seeing something similar evolve in the expectations of Euro clients versus US clients?
I think it's a really underrated topic. It's something that probably permeates our decision-making trees much more than we realize. I'm not going to say these are blanket statements, but I will generally say US clients fear losing market share significantly more than Europe does, whereas Europe almost fears regulators more so than market shares in a lot of ways. Again, they both care about those things, but in the terms of prioritization, you can definitely feel market share versus regulators through the decision-making tree. But Stefan, to your point, I do think by default, because of regulations and data sovereignty, the EU does look more towards the composability first because of those constraints and those boxes, so to speak, whereas the US thinks of those as secondary when really the customer threatening to churn is more important than the compliance boxes. Again, both important in kind of both parts of the world, but from a prioritization standpoint, you definitely get that feeling throughout. Jason, last thing I'll mention, as you said, in highly regulated industries, fintech, things like that, those are always paramount for sure. But if they're nice to have things, they certainly fall in a certain place between US and EU versus have to have things. I think it deserves this whole webinar, actually. I think it deserves a whole webinar.
There could be a whole separate webinar on this. Oleg, I guess from a platform solution perspective and from a flexibility perspective, obviously you're trying to court clients with Virto in both Europe and the US. So how do you think about this topic?
Yeah, so it's a key point for us. So and not only if you look on the platform, I absolutely agree with Stefan and Jacobi. It's not about technology; it's whole delivery pipeline and the whole delivery ecosystem, from software implementation, what we need and what we have and what we need to integrate it. Where we are planning to host, possibility to host in private cloud, public cloud, on-premise, in different data centers, or maybe change it in the possibility to change it, right? Because you can start as United States, but then if your business is growing, you want to, we need to Europe, shift to this one, and you need flexibility to manage it without rebuilding the platform and solution what you developed for United States from scratch, or maybe create a new one, because it means like you will duplicate the business. And I see only two options, right? Maybe kill the previous one. So because recreating the solution, it's the huge effort and can be, you can spend years to change the already integrated solution to a new one without opportunity to scale your business, right? So it's about standards, protocols, right, and etc. So everything. And final, of course, it's related to how you provide the audit, how you understand where data is stored, first of all, in your system, and what kind of data you send outside of it. So what kind of dependency you have, and provide this traceability of whole cycle and whole ecosystem. Because usually, if you look on the e-commerce, it's it's pros or cons of the e-commerce solution. It's sales channels, right? It's a window for clients. Clients sign in, browse the data, get access to different ecosystem, but it's one window for different services inside of your business. And e-commerce for this one and platform that allow to build the e-commerce, it should play this kind of role to make this traceability and understanding where the data from initial input from the customer after the registration is going outside of it. And it's a challenge for us, but let's repeat me to initial our topic about composability. From my point of view, the platform should bring this capability, provide the answer how to implement it, and the implementation partner should less worry about it. So if they are going to grow, they need to receive from the platform. If you are planning to scale the business to Europe, you follow this, and this. If you need to change and deploy to private cloud, follow to this process. It's a responsibility of the platform, and we as an implementation of the platform, and I am a platform solution architect and CTO, so we need to focus on it and take responsibility of the answering on the main questions and new challenges on the platform side, and usually client product should less think about it.
Yeah, I think, and we could even get into the China discussion as well, which is a whole separate discussion if you're selling into China and what kind of hosting and infrastructure and where it needs to be co-located in the Great Firewall of China. So basically, the key takeaway from this topic point is where you operate today may not be where you operate tomorrow, and you need to be thinking about core architecture, core data hosting, core data integrity, compliance issues, data sovereignty issues. You need to be thinking about those things regardless of whether you're a USA company today and you're headquartered in the USA selling to 100% US clients. That may not be the case in 5, 10, 15 years. So if you are not thinking about hosting, if you are not thinking about infrastructure, if you are not thinking about data integrity and privacy and data flows and the ability to be forgotten, the ability for accounts to be fully deleted from every single system if the customer so desires, then you are potentially going to run into major issues as you look to expand globally. So that's a key consideration. Even if it's not today, it probably will be tomorrow. So key consideration now. Now because we're running a little bit short on time, we're going to kind of combine these last 3 key topical areas: what does work, what doesn't work, and the small fix, big impact topic. So thinking about, okay, cool. What are some anecdotes, some stories, some areas where we have seen with our clients where some things that worked really, really well from a composability, decomposability perspective, some things that didn't work well, and then also what are some key things that you've witnessed in the market where, small change, big impact? And I'm going to start with my own one example here where one of my clients, because they had done no market research, I kind of forced them into doing some market research with their customers as part of the solutioning and discovery phase, because everything up till the point where they met me was internal. They had done internal workshops, they had worked with internal teams, but they hadn't interviewed the customer about what the customer was challenged with in dealing with their business. And funnily enough, one of the customers said, look, e-commerce, whatever, not really that important to us, whether they offer e-commerce or not. But what I would love to have is an automated follow-up and an automated place where I can track my order from the time it leaves their warehouse to the time it hits our warehouse. Because in 15 years of doing business with this supplier, we've never known, unless we ring up our account manager, we have never known when an order is going to hit our receiving dock. And because we buy 20 and 40-foot containers worth of product from this supplier, it ties up a spot on our receiving dock until I have a team to devan the product, until I have a team to put away the product, and that also delays the time till the product is actually available to our customers. So this is a major challenge. So if you could just automate that and just make that available to us, it would make our customer experience so much better with this supplier. So sometimes we think the big, flashy, new websites with all this amazing new functionality and automated quote requests and RMA returns and all these amazing things, and maybe even agentic commerce, we think those are going to be the most important thing to our customer, when sometimes it's just the basics. And if we could nail those, they would be significantly happier with our business, right? So we'll start with you, Stefan, about some things that you've seen work, not work, some big levers that get pulled that maybe we don't think of as big levers today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, first of all, if you think to what kind of things really do work when talking with the customer about composability and decomposability, and maybe that makes the bridge a little bit to what does not work, because that mostly they go hand in hand, right? So things that really are working is that a customer has clear system boundaries, that they really think about, okay, what problem do I want to solve? What do I have in-house? What can I reuse? And what do I need to add or change to the stack that I have. And for example, when you're talking about product management, and I said it before, is it something that I want into my commerce platform? If I don't want it to have in my commerce platform, do I want it in a separate PIM system? Do I have the capabilities to get the persons up and running? Do I have the ownership? Because that's also the bridge to something that probably won't work. When people want to have data or want to have functionality, but do not have the ownership or do not have any idea what the processes are of getting that on track. What I'm seeing with projects a lot of time is that data and processes is underestimated to the technology. They all know that you can have a shopping cart with products in it. They all know then you can show product information online. But how do I get it there? How is it maintained? What are the touch points? Where does it need to go? Who's the owner of it? Which person is responsible? Those kinds of questions are getting more and more important than the technology that is really supporting it. And when you look to, okay, what is a small change and a big win? I have an example of a project I did, I believe 1 year ago. We're building a B2B online catalog where the sales engineers and the dealers could fulfill orders for their customers. So their customers come to the shop, they go behind a PC, they're going through all the configurations and everything they want in the product. And then based from the dealer perspective, the order will be placed and it will go to our customer where the whole order gets fulfilled and getting into the ERP. We had that whole system completely set up with all the integrations and all the things around it. And then somebody from another division came and said, okay, I want my engineers also to have information like the manuals and all the product information that we also have on the shop. But they don't want to shop, of course. They just want to have it as an information catalog. So everything that we already built, we could just add a little bit of roles and a few customizations, and the whole environment for employees that were working there from maintenance, they could log in with single sign-on, and they will have the same catalog as the customer on the side, but now with all manuals in it from the PIM. Schedules for customers, detailed information about the product, how does it perform. So you can have one portal, different rules. When we have the initial setup done, it was really easy to onboard the second one. And the same is with different countries. When we roll out one country, we have a certain implementation, we have a certain theme there, we have a certain look and feel. We can duplicate it very easy to other countries. Just change the configuration and the changes that we need depending on that country, because being in Europe, you know a lot about the details that are there in the country, and we're a little bit on forehand. We know what we can expect when we're talking with those customers. And then we can just tune the settings and getting the next and the next and the next easy ones up and running. So initial investment setup will be the whole process, getting everything cleared, then taking the organization to the next step and roll it out. Multiple countries, multiple divisions, all around the initial investment. So it's value for buck, let's put it that way.
Bang for buck. I love it. Jacobi, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Composability, decomposability is a side effect of this, but what I find works nearly 100% of the time is when organizations that we work with anyways go from project management mode to product or product ownership mode, and they understand how to do that. The hard work, so imagine you're playing sports, you have practices, you have run-throughs, you have walkthroughs. That's kind of like doing projects, but then when the game starts, that's product ownership mode, right? That's where the hard work actually starts, is on the field when you're playing the game. In this case, it's after go live. So I find organizations are best successful, and again, composability is a side effect of this, when as they're working through project mode, they're building that backlog. They're figuring out what to do or not do in the future. So a very high recommendation I make to B2B organizations who are non-digitally born is to be chatting with product owners or product managers at software companies about how they decide what to build or not to build. That will translate directly to the B2B world. You just don't know it yet. And so B2B organizations like manufacturers, distributors are more like software providers than they realize. They just don't know it yet. So I find that almost always applies, Jason, is when they have a product ownership and management mindset, that will have an effect on composability long term. But that's a different concept or idea that you have to build in. You can't just buy. I can't just pay an invoice for that. So I think that's a muscle that organizations should build and what almost always works.
Yeah, and I think to your point, one of the things that I see is that sometimes manufacturers and distributors will have a PMO, they'll have a project management office for all their internal projects, their internal IT projects, their external customer-facing IT projects, etc. But what they don't have is a product management office. And, project managers don't, or program managers even, don't always make great product managers. And so I think that is a muscle that these businesses need to build inside their business, because no B2B project is a one and done project. It is a never ending program of work to stay relevant to both your internal teams and your external customers. And that is a never ending battle. That is a never ending opportunity inside your business to continue to improve. And so if a business thinks they can come in, they can spend $500,000 or whatever it is for this one and done project, boil the ocean, get live, and then, hey, that's going to work for us for the next 5 to 10 years without touching it. That is that is a delusion, unfortunately, that we have to reset expectations in that area. And I think absolutely right. I think having a product management mindset versus a project or program management mindset is absolutely critical in terms of continuing to add value to this asset that you've started to build through that initial project. I couldn't agree more. Oleg, your final thoughts on what works, what doesn't work, and when you think about your platform, what's important to you guys over the next, say, 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah, so it's just briefly about complicity. If you're talking about composability and decomposability, it's, from my mind, it's about complicity, because it's what doesn't work. So it's we got from real investigation, real client solution project. First of all, so I saw a lot of solutions when complicity was too big. So IT team, business team prefer don't touch it at all. Don't modify it, don't change it, don't improve it, and etc. Keep it. And that's all. So it's a blocker for everybody, right? So they stuck and freeze the current solutions and prefer don't resolve it at all and do any step and adjustment until they choose a new platform. What actually works? So it's related to this one. It's in one of the call with solution architect of the client project, they develop a product. Honestly, let me do the step with some context about it. They had 5 different e-commerce solutions. And then they migrated in one e-commerce Virto Commerce platform, right? And after the 5, or for now, I think it's 6 years of the development, he wrote back to me and said, so I'm glad to see and I'm proud that Virto Commerce allowed to us to implement the feature at the same speed of the development as we do it 5 years ago. So it's no technical depth, no effort. And Virto Commerce modularity brings this like kind of management and responsibility and creates this like boundaries that focus implementation teams and developers. They change it to dev team. They modified solutions. They have different requirements, but solution predictable, state understandable. And one of the criteria for me, if you ask it me, and maybe in the chat already somebody asked it, how you understand how to split your module and how to decompose the platform on modules. So from my point of view, it's criteria very simple. So if you open the source code of the module, review it, and say, oh, I understood the solution absolutely wrong, and I can replace it with my own visions in 1 week or maybe in 2 weeks. So it's ideal way how you understand the complexity here. Some functionality is responsible, focus on single responsibility implementations, clear responsibility implementations, and etc. But if you want, you can change and replace it by yourself. So it's no decision. So developer can do it, implement it, and he understand what he can achieve. So first of all, it's achievable. So it's how I see it. Related to our roadmap and what we see it, of course, AI, powered by AI development. So it's for me, it's like designed by human, developed by human, powered by AI. So it's like a key term, what I see it, will increase the capacity of the current team to add more functionality, add more features, to handle more functionality, to deliver it faster in time, and provide a new way of the customization. So it's related, if before we have some kind of additional layers of the development process, it will be eliminated by automated tools, and it's one team and one developer can implement it more faster during the assistance. And Stefan and previous time also demonstrated. We have not touched much, but maybe good for next session, but it's how I see it. And indeed, we'll continuously update, improve, and I expect that we will simplify the life and effort of client implementation project. So they will focus on implementation, as I said, on implement business requirements, and less think about the platform, less think about composability, right? And maybe it's like final thought. So don't think about terms. It's need to keep in mind, but let's make that business can grow up with technology, and they need to think. But at the same time, so we will try to do it. They will need to think about technology, tools, all these technical terms, architecture less, so they will trust us, right? So this layers of complicity covered by Virto Commerce, his level of complicity covered by these guys like Stefan, Jacobi, like dream teams. They can drive and move the solution fast. And final, if it's required, they can build their own dream team in parallel, and don't increase the delivery timeline. Don't break the delivery at all if they have some lack in skills or competence.
Love it.
Jason,
Well, listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. We're running about 5 minutes long, so we had carved out 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, but it looks like we're already over time, so we're going to go ahead and short circuit that. If you guys that have been listening haven't had your questions answered, please reach out to Stefan, Jacobi, or Oleg. We're all on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of most of us, is to just reach out, DM us on LinkedIn with any of your specific questions around platform selection, around team structure, around, build versus buy versus partner. We're all, look, sure, we all have businesses to run, but at the end of the day, we also want a great outcome for our customers. That's the number one priority. And at least speaking for myself, if I'm not that guy, if I'm not going to be the best person to work with you, I have plenty of people out there, especially members of the B2B e-commerce association, et cetera, that I can point you to that will be a great fit for you. And I know we all just want our number one priority is to get a great outcome for the clients and prospects that we have the opportunity to engage with. So thank you very much for attending this webinar hosted by Virto Commerce. Thank you to my esteemed panelists for your time. I'm going to actually share now a final screenshot here of a slide that the Virto team wanted me to go ahead and put up here. And the key takeaway here is that the Virto Commerce team is going to send out all attendees of both Webinar 1 and Webinar 2. All of the key takeaways are going to be wrapped up into a nice, easy to understand PDF document, all with the perfect outline following exactly the talking points that we discussed over Series 1 and Series 2. And we're going to be putting that into a nice, easily digestible PDF that will be sent out to you all via PDF. We'll send it out via email. And if you want to request that, if you know someone that should have attended these webinars but did not, please go ahead and let us know, and we'll make sure and add them to the mailing list. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for attending, and we can't wait to speak to you again soon. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you to the panelists.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jason. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.